So,
Yeah.
Bill, you had some really interesting experiences in your life that led you to have a very unusual amount of care and wisdom and concern around the issues of human organization, socioeconomic justice, governance, democracy, decision making, wise structuring of multi generational economic transitions, and a very interesting and diverse array. So tell me about tell me about being in Eastern Europe after the
Yeah.
fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. A couple lawyer friends of mine, connections, got messages from two people in Bulgaria, both at two different channels. One was the son of a former Supreme Court justice under the communist regime. And the son was in law school, and his father had died of cancer. And so he had inherited the family apartment above Lenin Boulevard in in Sofia. He asked us to come and lecture at the law school on democracy, freedom, and Christianity. There was like this hunger for something different. This was in 1991. The wall had just fallen. We ended up, I gathered 100 pounds of books on law from the American perspective, and business books, textbooks mainly, to bring to the law school. I got a bunch donated from Pepperdine Law School and in different places. We met over there, or I met one of the guys on the way, and the other guy flew separately. And we had interviews lined up, and this young guy, Radoslav, was very outgoing. He knew everybody because his father had been so important that he just knew everybody. So we went to law school, and one day I presented all these books, and they were happy, and we were invited to a class, and one of the three of us, Sam Erickson, liked to talk about the intersection of law and faith and democracy and all kinds of things. And he used Venn diagrams to show how things interrelated. And he brought in his Christian faith. And one of the guys in that classroom, unbeknownst to us, had been very much searching for hope and faith. And when he heard that, he decided he was going to follow Jesus. We had no idea that this happened. And then Rado said, okay, we got to go now. We have to go to the parliament. They're debating the new constitution. So we had Radoslav and then us in our suits and coats and briefcases. We marched from this old law school right in downtown. While we were sitting in that classroom, the windows were open. It was actually warm, and there were shouts of whistles and police sirens and people shouting slogans, and we didn't know what was going on. And Rauda said they're having demonstrations at the parliament. We're going to go there. So we're marching through town, and when the people saw us coming, they just divided like the Red Sea parting, and we walked right up to the barricades. The parliament was on a square. We walked past everybody, and the police opened the barricades, and we walked right up to the steps of the parliament. And waiting at the top was a woman who happened to be the chief legal counsel to Parliament, and she was the consultant on their new constitution, and they were just debating it. So we were invited to come in, and we looked like the Doodah parade, marching along the streets with our briefcases, and just very solemn. And we didn't know what the people thought about that, but they seemed to like that we were there. We didn't know what they thought we were. We were the only people in Parliament able to watch it. No one was allowed in. It was a closed session. So we sit up in the balcony, and this attorney is leaning over and quietly giving us commentary. Oh, they're saying this. Oh, they're saying that. And there was all this heated debate, and people were getting up to speak for and against different aspects. And of course, I didn't speak any Bulgarian. I could read a few signs and read a little bit of Cyrillic alphabet. That's it. And so at the end, there was a vote, and they voted to pass the Constitution. And we leave. We were in there for, I don't know, a couple hours. We walk out. The people are just milling around. The word had apparently got out that the Constitution had passed. I don't remember exactly. A long time ago. And there were no protests. People were quiet. There's happiness in the air. And we proceeded to go about our business and had other meetings with members of the government ministries and nonprofit organizations and leaders. And then we left. Now, one of our team members was attorney Roger Sherrard from Washington State. And later, I went and moved my family up to Washington and got admitted in the Washington bar, and I worked with Roger. And then years later, I ended up moving back to Southern California. And finally, word came down, this is years later, Roger shared what had happened because he had become friends with a few people in the current ruling party at that time. This is years later. And the guy who had decided to follow Jesus in that classroom with the flies buzzing around, the windows open to the street, and the sounds of shouting and sirens, he had become a prominent lawyer, and he had become the legal counsel to the ruling party. And it turns out that once they took power, they went into the secret archives and opened them up. And there were notes that had been left there by generals and party communist officials, former officials who wanted to take back power. They were planning a coup. And they had said, we have to foment some kind of an insurrection in order to justify rolling in with weapons and heavy equipment. And so they were counting on the students, because they had plants in the student organizations. They were counting on the students to riot, and that would give them pretext. But we found out that when the students, massed by the thousands, saw Americans looking like Harvard doodah parade guys, they thought we were election observers. And they decided, oh, let's not riot. Let's just see what happens. Maybe the Constitution will pass and we'll get what we want. So they stayed quiet. And these frustrated generals had nothing to link their coup to. And so this guy had found this information, and he was quite prominent. He let it be known to different people, especially people who had been involved way back then.